Hello and welcome back to Inside Track US and to our third and final panel where we'll be discussing cybersecurity and the ever-increasing challenges partners are facing. I'm pleased to be joined by Rome Hendler, co-founder and CEO of email security specialist Trustify. And we also have Joe Morin, CEO of MSSP Cyflay, with us today as well. Thank you both for joining me in the studio today. I wanted to start with one of the reasons why cybersecurity is such a hot topic in the channel right now, and that is, of course, because of cyber attacks. The likes of Accenture, Soprasteria, Kaseya, Computcom, and SolarWinds, just to name a few, have all fallen victim to a cyber attack, some of which have even faced reputation-damaging effects. So, Joe, why don't we start with you? How has this proliferation in cyber attacks affected your business?
Yeah, it's been a pretty a significant impact, I think, especially with global events. Clients are super sensitive. One of the main things that's happening now is cybersecurity insurance. Everybody knows that it's an imminent threat and they have to do something. And they're reaching out to insurance providers, and insurance providers are actually retracting and making it extremely hard to actually procure insurance. And so they're forcing a bunch of security controls, and they have to go and obtain these products and services in order to actually effectively get covered. So that's been a huge impact. But I think even the small business now, they fully understand they have to do something. And the enterprise is now, of course, extremely paranoid and looking to outsource to MSSPs and get augmentation of their current team so that we can watch more stuff, day and night while their teams are dealing with, more escalated incidents.
And Rome, from your perspective, what are the top threats that could cause some of these reputation-damaging effects?
I just want to echo the insurance point is actually very interesting, because even us as a company, sometimes you get to a point that you debate should I even pay the premium that they're asking for. They raise the premium if they're willing to insure you. They raise the deductibles, and insurance is becoming a very prominent problems for all type of business, especially in cybersecurity. And sometimes there is just no will to provide any insurance on certain things, because there is such a proliferation of attacks that the insurance company just don't want to do it. But I'm sorry, again, back to your question. Kind of the thing that we've seen, there are a few things that happened recently that especially during the pandemic. So the first thing that we've seen, in general, over time, cyber is becoming bigger and bigger threat, and it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. It's only going to become more prominent part of our business, because more we do things online, more we count on things to become digitally. Cyber is just much more appealing than any other type of fraud or crime. So, and what is happening is that even the most undigital businesses have to be digital in certain aspects. So, and you see that there is more and more product on different element of any type of industry and any type of vertical that they need in help of cybersecurity solution. What we specifically have seen, so we focus on email security, as you mentioned. We've seen a big growth during the pandemic, because what happened in the pandemic, and you see it across the board, you see it with SMBs and you see it with bigger companies. You've seen companies moving all of a sudden from working at home, from working in the office to work at home remotely. So this is a problem that we've seen with big enterprises as well. Everybody all of a sudden count on email as the main mean of communication. So in the past, I would walk over to the desk next to me and hand them a document. Today, I will email it, and that's the most basic stuff. All the communication is being done in email. All the signature is being done through different type of solutions. So everything had to become very quickly digitally. On smaller businesses, we've seen a huge move into virtual, because even if you had a small business, it was counting a lot of face-to-face, in-person services. Many of them had to reinvent themselves and move their environment, at least at the height of the pandemic, to the digital world. And what happened is, because email became so prominent, we've seen a surge in attacks on emails, because you know the people are looking for the bad actor out there are looking for the low hanging fruit, and the low hanging fruit are the ones that are the least sophisticated and the least protected. And email always been an older mean of communication, older environment and infrastructure. And during the pandemic, we've seen a huge surge of different attacks, and we can elaborate a little bit more what type of sophisticated attack that we see, if you want, later on.
Thank you. So with these high-profile supply chain attacks and with the reputational damage that can come with them, what can partners do to protect themselves? And with that, are customers demanding more accountability from their solution providers? Joe, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I think they're absolutely expecting it. I mean, especially with Kaseya and Sunburst, we had an influx of requests in terms of, and Log4j was another one, where it's just, now we have to look at all of our vendors, and certainly our clients are expecting answers from us. I think the biggest thing is you really need a CISO these days. You need a virtual CISO, at least a fractional CISO. There's a lot of options out there. Side channel security is one prolific one in the US. But I think the key thing is to start with that, because you need continuous guidance, especially when there's events. You need a plan. You need a plan of, how do I go and address my vendors? A lot of companies, unfortunately, they don't even know who their vendors really are. So taking inventory of those vendors, understanding how to vector and reach out to them and get answers. And you need a process so that you can do this very quickly, because within 24 hours of these things being announced as an emerging threat campaign, a global vulnerability, clients are expecting answers. We've got large enterprise clients, we've got federal clients, and 72 hours is not acceptable to these entities, and it shouldn't be. So when it comes down to that, there's not enough time to scramble. So I think the two biggest things are really get a vCISO that can help with a strategy, a plan, and cover these basic things, because really that's a people thing, it's a process thing. That's not technology. That's not a solution that can be developed and sold. That is just brute forcing it with people and thought and planning.
So with these threats in mind, what niche or perhaps growth areas in cybersecurity should partners be aware of? Rome, why don't you start us off?
So again, we focus on email security, so I'll speak only specifically on email security. What we've seen, we've seen two trends. The first one is there is increase of sophistication in the type of attacks that we see in the market. So if in the past, you used to send a virus to somebody hoping they're going to click on it and then it's going to spread throughout the organization, now you see things that are way more targeted and that they are way more sophisticated. They use different technology as social engineering, they use impersonation, and then you have attacks like what we call BEC, the business email compromise, that they actually compromise your system and penetrate to your infrastructure of email without you knowing about it and send out email on your behalf. And those emails are actually legit. So the other side can't even notice that, because the email is actually coming from you. And it's very difficult for the other side to catch them. So those are the two things that we've seen, that they're very sophisticated. They cause a lot of damage, both monetary and in reputation. And an organization needs solution and we see a lot of solution coming to solve those type of attacks. The second thing that we've seen specifically with smaller clients, they are looking for a solution that they can have one-stop shop. So big enterprise got used to basically creating layers of providers because they have a good provider and they do 80% of the job, but this 20% they're going to bring someone else. And for this, they're going to bring someone else. And then it becomes very difficult to manage all those different vendors. And when something is happening, it's difficult to know where they are coming from. So specifically with smaller clients, we see them trying to find a vendor that can provide them both the inbound, the outbound, all the regulation concern that are coming with outbound, and also all the advanced threat that I just mentioned now.
Joe, what are your views on high growth areas in cybersecurity?
I think all of them, frankly, but I think, right now it's some of the basics, frankly, a lot of clients we talk to, big, small, all the in between, very few, have even the basics really nailed down. So I really think, the high growth is really around that consulting, the vCISO. I think there's a huge opportunity. Penetration testing has gone up for more in the spirit of security control validation. But that being said, when you actually have to start doing stuff, I think zero trust is a big part of what's coming. Micro segmentation. We see a lot of activity when a breach actually happens and malware is out there, ransomware, et cetera. It's easy to propagate when everything's exposed and flat, as they say. So I think microsegmentation, reducing and basically displacing VPNs, that's a huge opportunity. But really just in the basic cloud-based SIM, end users are really not okay with metered storage and that sort of thing. They really want simple flat pricing. They want to send logs. They want to do that. So I think just some of the basics, frankly, this year are going to be a really big part of our business, is just getting a proper plan, doing the basics with MFA, getting rid of the VPN, enabling zero trust, and just doing basic SIM type monitoring and maybe endpoint protection as well. Vulnerability management, of course, is a key topic right now. Scanning is one thing, but what we're learning is that scanning it's kind of dime a dozen. There's a lot of options now, but the patching of servers and machines is a big problem because, again, it takes more people to do that. It needs planning, it needs orchestration, and that's been a big challenge too. So I covered a lot of stuff there, but it's just kind of where we're at.
Well, that leads me quite nicely into my next question. When speaking to players in the channel, I hear a lot of noise around zero trust security, as you just touched on, Joe. Is the hype behind this approach gaining much traction from a sales perspective, zero trust security? What are your views on that?
Zero trust really isn't a product. It's a framework. It's an approach, methodology, et cetera. What we're seeing is, it really does dramatically consolidate, especially when you have a full stack zero trust platform that allows you to basically do everything. And zero trust is really about continuous validation of people accessing things, data, systems, et cetera. And when you have the convergence of authentication, interrupting and basically being in line to exactly what that user, who they are and what they're trying to access, and making sure it's them, but then layering on analytics, machine learning detections on top of that, it's extremely powerful. It's catching on. I think the big thing that we're seeing is that it's hard to educate users because it's hard to change. It's not convenient to change. So, it just takes a little while to educate users and get them comfortable with starting somewhere in a zero trust portfolio and working their way through the rest of it. I mean, once you're on the platform, it's easy to turn stuff on. It's just making that initial leap. That's been the challenge. But clients are definitely coming around. They're starting to actually ask for it. Whereas before it was like, what is this zero trust thing? So I think it's going to, really catch on this year. and certainly next year and beyond, not just enterprise, but small business included.
So on that point around sales, analyst firm Gartner Research has found that in the past 5 years, the percentage of boards that consider cybersecurity a core business risk has risen from 58% to 88%. So in that context, how can partners think more strategically about presenting and selling cybersecurity in terms of business risks and not just disparate technologies packaged together? Rome, why don't you start us off?
So I think that you need to understand who is your audience when you present any type of technology to sell to your board. If the board is very sophisticated, savvy techs, it's very different than if it's a more traditional. If you're and often more senior people or older people, the more traditional, not always as savvy in technology, especially if the vertical itself is not pure technology. So I think that when you talk about security, in today's frame of everything that is happening, I think it's quite obvious that there is a need. I think people in higher level don't understand exactly. It's always about how much should I spend, because spending can be endless, versus how much protection do I get. So it's almost like it's a balance. If you look at your house, how many locks are going to put on my door, and fences and alarm and video cameras, etc., etc. How much it's going to cost me versus the risk of somebody breaking into my house. But so when you present it to your board, you really need to understand your audience and how to make your case and really show the ROI for those type of solution that you're presenting. So you need to make it very, very simple. With emails, it's very simple because people really understand that the CEO, you show that somebody impersonate to your CEO or your CFO, you show that you send or could send money to an unauthorized client, vendor, or whatever it is. So it's relatively simple, but that's how you need to really think about ROI and not just use the scaring tactic of, it's doomsday and you have to buy all those different solutions, and if not, we're gonna collapse.
And Joe, what are your views on selling cybersecurity as more of a business risk? So rather than just a technology, it'll benefit the business as a whole rather than it just be a sort of IT department issue, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, I think on the IT and security, we're just seeing convergence. It's no longer separate. It could be separate functions and teams, but there's ultra collaboration, if not total convergence. Summarizing into a CIO and that sort of thing. But I think one of the CIOs for an enterprise client that we have, he is adamant, don't talk to me about cost. Everything costs money. Doing nothing costs money. In fact, it could be a lot. If you're not talking to me about increasing my confidence and reducing my risk, I do not want to hear it. And I thought that was absolutely sound and absolute advice. So really, what we're focusing on now is the concept and the approach of extended detection and response. And the notion is that we should be able to touch all of your systems, your data, all of that, that's for sure. But normalize that down to the entity, the machine, or the user, and be able to come up with a risk score. And the real big problem now is not about tools and doing that, but it's about orchestrating and interconnecting the things that people already have with the things that they need to do. And things change. So that process that we just, coded and accounted for, it changed tomorrow, or it's going to change tomorrow. And the tools that you had, it's going to turn over. CISOs are turning over every 14 months, and change is always present. So I think this XDR approach is long lasting, integrating with everything. And the new problem is responding. The expectation is that you could see stuff and you're alerting and all of that basic stuff. But now it's about how do you respond and do it rapidly, inject logic so that the organization's personality is injected with their decisions and you don't break things. But that's definitely what it's coming down to. I think XDR platforms plus zero trust plus proper planning, and you've got a chance.
Okay, and finally, Rome, I know you wanted to touch on this. In the context of what is going on in the Ukraine right now, how does the current geopolitical environment contribute to escalating security threats?
I think that there are two elements to it. One is really what we've seen, a huge demand for cybersecurity product mainly from the Western countries, afraid of all kind of attacks from the Russian side, but also from the other side, we've seen hacking into different Russian government entities. So what you see is, again, you have a physical war that at the same time the cyber war is going side by side, which is something that really fueled the industry of cybersecurity in general. On top of it, there is another thing that we've seen, and with the war, it's even much more so. It's just a shortage of skilled people. Ukraine used to be, for Israel, for example, they had many programmers working in the Ukraine and working with Israeli technology company and working with many other places in the world. So you've seen all of a sudden shortage of labor, and it's something that in general, even before the beginning of the war, we've seen that it's very difficult for a company to keep their employees, especially high skilled employees, and they need to find different solutions because they cannot keep all those people in place. Therefore, they look for all kind of outsourcing or semi-outsourcing of their cybersecurity needs. Some of it Joe alluded to before. But with the war, this issue increased dramatically.
Okay. I think that's a good place to draw this panel to a close today. I'd like to thank you both again for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.